Well, for more on the LA Auto Show's environmentally conscious vehicles, let's bring in Karl Brauer. He's an executive analyst at iSeeCars.com. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, great to be on with you.
So first off, start by giving us an idea of what's creating the most buzz at this weekend's auto show.
I think the fact that there were just so many electric vehicles. So as a theme, we've never seen, I think, this many premieres, brand new world debuts that were all electric vehicles, not that kind of number. And it definitely dominated the show. And I think within that, I think both the Hyundai and Kia concepts were well received. People thought they had not just unique styling, but very unique interior designs and approaches. And then, of course, the idea that there's this brand new company from Vietnam, this VinFast company that's claiming to have vehicles available as early as next calendar year.
And to that point, then, what are the expectations in terms of which companies are showing this year and what sort of attendance we might see?
Well, there's the press days, which is what I attend and usually go to these shows on, and then there's the public days. And I think there was some concern, I know I had some, on how many people would even be there. And, you could describe it as crowds at each of the debuts. Not a huge crowd, certainly not as big a crowds as we saw at previous shows before the pandemic, but it wasn't a smattering. It wasn't just a few people. It was enough people that it still felt like you had an audience when you were doing these unveils. So I felt good about that. I think the automakers were happy about that we're doing the debuts.
And as you mentioned, electric vehicles really were the name of the game this year. So talk about some of the advancements that we've seen in electric vehicles or EVs at the auto show, especially compared to years past.
Yeah, electric vehicles used to really just be these kind of far out kind of fantasy things. It's not like we haven't seen EVs at auto shows for years, really. But the idea that these are real vehicles, that they're either ready for production or they're going to be representative of something that's going to be ready for production soon, like the Hyundai and the Kia vehicles, though that wasn't usually what you saw at a show. And so, you've got ranges that are now typically 250 and going up to 500, and you've got pricing very commonly under $50,000. And used to be, half that range and twice that amount when you would hear about concept electric vehicles. So I think that's the advancement, is we're seeing reality here as opposed to these kind of fantasy vehicles that don't represent what anyone would buy like we used to.
Now, it's interesting because General Motors is expected to show this year, but without any EVs. What does that say about what GM is thinking in terms of electric vehicle development?
I think that's more representative of what they're thinking about auto shows. We know that they're doing a lot behind the scenes. They've got a lot going on with their own platforms, their own battery technology, but I don't think they really viewed the auto show this year, the LA Auto Show, and auto shows in general, as an area that they necessarily had to utilize to show off and make news. And more automakers are doing that all the time. I mean, that's the one concern about auto shows. They'll always be there for consumers, but as venues for breaking industry news, a lot of automakers are deciding they'll just do their own thing and kind of have all the attention versus trying to share it with 10, 20, 30 other debuts in a 24-hour period.
And as we look at these companies continuing to roll out EVs, we do see the strongest adoption, though, in China and Europe. Why are U.S. consumers not as quick to switch to electric or hybrid vehicles?
Well, the U.S., is a large country. It's got a lot of wide open space. It's the same reason big trucks and SUVs are so popular here. So I think there's first the idea that even with 200, 300, 400-mile range, you're still going to end up having to stop for an extended period to charge unless you're just running around in your own town. And I don't think that's quite as big a concern in some of the other markets where people's commutes and just the distances they travel are as large. Also, there was a different tone with the leadership and the administration here until recently, and I think you've seen that reverse in the last 8-9 months, the infrastructure support and other elements, the policy they're putting in place. So I feel like the U.S.'s maybe new attitude with the current leadership is to get back toward where Europe and China are in terms of supporting EVs.
And of course, affordability, a big issue. Are we going to continue to see pricing for some of these new vehicles being affected by these chip shortages and other supply chain bottlenecks?
Yeah, unfortunately, this doesn't seem to be anywhere near resolved, and it's going to take a while. You can't just snap your fingers and have bigger global chip production. So I think for the near term and medium term, we're going to see these 20, 30% increases in used cars and new cars being typically priced 5 to 15% over MSRP. And a lot of automakers not being able to sell as many vehicles as they otherwise could. Sales have been held back this year, not by a demand issue by any means, but by a supply issue.
And just very quickly, talk about what you're seeing with used car prices and inventory.
Yeah, we just did a study at iSeeCars.com, and we're going to see sedans that are going to be still maybe reasonably priced, but SUVs, trucks, these more popular segments, they're just hard to get any kind of deal on those. There's more demand than there's supply, and we don't see that slowing down or changing in the next 6 to 9 months.
All right, well, great having you on. Karl Brauer there, Executive Analyst at iSeeCars.com.